Scripty be the maker of things. You want to build that foundry, but you don't know where to start, and you do not want to spend a lot of money. I'm going to show you how I did it. There's tons of ways of doing it, but this is the journey that I went down, and a lot of the stuff I've had a very long time, and it still works just great. So let's get started, and I want to kind of cover what I covered last week was the nuts and bolts and how to build or what you need to get. Now I'm going to kind of go over the different pieces. I've got the molding bench right here. The scrap. Scrap is everywhere, and that's what you can melt down. Got a couple different furnaces. I've got my big one, but remember the propane tank one, that is a real doodah. That works good. You got to have some propane. And then lastly over here, this orange device is a Muller that I made from a cement mixer because you need to keep that sand mixed up and in good shape, because once you get sand casting, the sand will make or break your day. Believe me, if you do not have good packed sand that's too loose, you're going to pull your molds apart, they're going to crumble, and you're going to get frustrated. So you have to mix that sand, whether it be Petrobond, oil-based, or green sand, water-based. It really needs to be tip-top. So this is my homemade molding bench, and it's nothing fancy. It's made from 2x6. It's a box. I put some wheels on it so I can move it about. And then these slide back and forth to do my ramming. And then I have a little shelf right here. What's nice about the molding bench is when you're ramming up your mold, you can just scoop your sand out of the bottom here and put it in. And you can slide this back and forth, or you can stack your sand over in here. But you do not want to lose your sand. It's expensive. So you need to keep your sand in good shape and off the floor if you can, because like I said, it's expensive. So that is a very inexpensive way to make a molding bench. Right there. The bottom is something that I just had, but it doesn't have to be near that robust. It can just be some casters, some 4x4s, whatnot. But you really need to have some sort of a bench, and it can be just your workbench. That works great. I put some hooks on the side here to hang the different things. Like I put my parting powder should hang there, though it's not, and it looks like that's broke, so that's not good. But I do have a small little tool area right here. And some of the tools that you're going to need is some pieces of conduit. The thinner the wall you can get, the better that your sprue and risers are going to drive into the sand. If you have a very heavy wall, like this one is a much heavier wall, it's hard to push that down in there. And then I just sharpen them, and you're going to have to eject the sand by either tapping, or I have a screwdriver handy to drive that out, because once that sand gets about to there, it starts pushing real hard. You can get it all the way down, but you do have to eject that sand out when you're going to do your next hole. Other stuff in here is little carving tools. I can use a screwdriver. This is what you do when I'm going to do some loose casting. I can get in there in my previous videos. If you've been watching, you can see that there's a lot of carving going on. So it's nice to have just a little toolbox, and then just some kind of a straight edge to go ahead when you finally get your molds made to kind of screed or level or whatever the technical term. I don't know what the foundry term is for that. Not sure. Scrap. I have got a friend who works for a waste management company, and he brought me these big boxes of scrap. And what's cool about scrap is, you know, if it fits, it will melt. The bigger stuff like this, you're going to have to cut it down. That can be kind of a hassle. You're going to need a Sawzall or something. So, I mean, you can do the can route too. You're going to want to do scrap burning outside, because there's so much dirt and goop and, yeah. So scrap, or you can buy it. You can buy ingots off eBay, and there's other guys that sell them, but you know, if you're starting out, bits and pieces smaller is going to be better for you. Let's go over to the propane tank furnace. This is the one that I covered in last week's video. right here, and the burner would just slide right in here, right there. So that is, you know, that's a super inexpensive way to get started. Check back on my other videos. I've got one that I showed how it's being built, and then last week's it's just kind of some general info on that. If you want to later on, if you really get ripping, I bought this secondhand. This is a really nice furnace too, and it works really well. Down inside the furnace is a crucible. Now this is something that I did not do, and it blew the side out of it. You're technically supposed to put them in your furnace at a lower heat and kind of season that, and I got too excited and I just threw it in there, and it blew the whole side right off of it. All right, you're gonna have to heat it up with something, and propane is what I've always used. Early on, I tried one time with the propane furnace using charcoal and a piece of longer pipe and a blow dryer, and it did work, but it was messy and the sparks were flying, so it did not take long for me to get a burner, build a burner. I actually bought the first one off eBay. It was 45 bucks. Still have that one, and it still works. So propane's the way to go. Now this is a bigger one. A 20-pound tank like this little one right here will probably run somewhere. You turn your burner on, don't quote me on it, but I think you can get about 8 hours of burn time, 7 to 8 hours, because I host casting classes. I haven't done one in the new shop, but I would get a lot of propane because we would burn it all day, and it seems to me that it would last a lot longer than one would think. So, you know, you're gonna need some propane and a burner. That's pretty much it as far as, you know, the nuts and bolts, but I want to cover the sand Muller. If you get to the next level of your casting, a Muller's really the way to go. Inexpensive, pretty simple to make. If you don't have a Muller, by having my molding bench on wheels, I can move this thing all about the shop. I have a designated area, but it is nice to have it on wheels, because what I normally do is set it up right next to the Muller, something like this. Actually the other way around, but I'm just showing you, just like so. It works nice being on wheels, that is for sure. So now when I'm ready to go, I just hit the machine. I got a couple different right away, and I just throw it in. You can hear it starting to work right now. So let's talk about this Muller. $200 box store cement mixer. I've got 2 paddles in there. This one right here is scraping the bottom, shooting it over that way. It comes over to this blade, and any of the big nuggets get flattened out by the wheel. Now, how to build it. I would do it differently right here. This would be different, and I think I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to notch that out, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's hard to get the bucket, and I do this, I scoop the sand when it's running. I come in here just like so, and then I make my molds. But when it's got a lot of sand in it, you can get this maybe half full before the motor starts to really bog down. This will get jammed in there. It's not a big deal, it's plastic. But anyway, 1x1 square tubing, some flat stock. I made this all adjustable. I wouldn't even do that, guys. I would just, well, this has to be bolted so you can get the wheel out, or just make sure your axle down here will come out. This is a Tractor Store super cheap wheelbarrow wheel, 10 bucks, 12 bucks. I've worn out one already. Anyway, that's nice to be bolted, but you probably don't have to overdo it. You could put 2 bolts. This one here, I've never touched this adjustment here. It's just the blade. to get that sand to curl around. It is not, this tower is not even bolted on. I just came right down in that area, right here. Let me take this off. We'll get a close up, sorry. Right there, it's tack welded. You want to go to the distance of bolting it, you know, go for it. That's fine. I just didn't think I'd ever have to take it off. But probably the most important thing on the whole Muller is down here. There's a plate. There's a plate in there, and it's a rather thick one. It's just what I had. It's stainless. So I had to cut that big ring out because you want that wheel to be compressing. You can see all of my spot welds right there. So that's where that plate fit. I mean, try to fit it the best you can, but it's not crazy. It's not crazy. The worst thing that would happen is if it didn't fit, the bottom would fill up full of your sand and you would never be able to get it out. And you don't want that either. So you have to get something on the bottom for the wheel to crush the nuggets. Otherwise, it's going to kind of defeat the purpose. Now you can start to hear it. The motor's going to start laboring a little bit because I'm getting some sand in there. Well, this is how I did it for a lot of years before I got a Muller. Right here, I would just use my sand when I knew it needed time to be kind of processed, if you want to call it that. I'd put some in a bucket. And I started out with Petrobond. That's your oil-based paint. And I would just sprinkle some in there. Well, this is how I did it for a lot of years before I got a Muller. Right here, I would just use my sand when I knew it needed time to be kind of processed, if you want to call it that. I'd put some in a bucket. And I started out with Petrobond. That's your oil-based paint. And I would just sprinkle some in there. And then I would just sit here and I would do this over and over, trying to, you know, get that sand all to the same consistency, and I'd run it through my hands. I would put latex gloves on because of the Petrobond. It would really, it's dirty. It's miserable stuff. But it does make a good part, and it's best to start out with the Petrobond, put it in a tote. You should put your green sand in a tote too so it doesn't dry out. But the Petrobond is going to be a little more user-friendly for beginning. It packs better, you're going to get a better part, and it stays pretty good if you put it in a tote. Now, I don't tote this, and it dries out really fast. I just add more water. But anyway, that is kind of how you mull that sand up by hand. So I use a propane torch to get it started. This, I was mistaken in my first video. I said it was a Venturi style. One of the followers or subscribers, he came to my rescue, and it's called a Oliver upwind burner. So I'm going to turn the gas on, and I'm going to crank the regulator up. It's pretty much that simple. You can't go full bore when you first fire it up. It just doesn't like it. It has to burn moisture off, and it certainly doesn't like it when you put it into the furnace when it's super cold at full speed. It takes some time to burn the moisture out of that and to get it so you can crank it up. The first one that I bought had a sleeve that fit over here, and it would be like an air choke. Get this down, and you can see when I put my hand over it. See that? It just chokes it right out. And I can feel the air going through here. This is a wonderful burner, the Oliver upwind burner, but it does not like wind outside, so you may have to tent this. I've got a little sheet metal tent when I'm outside because a little bit of wind, and it will really mess with it. So don't be alarmed if this happens. You have to kind of balance the amount of gas. When you first light, you don't want too much, you don't want not enough, but not enough, it will ignite in here. It's not hurting a thing, and actually throughout when you're melting your aluminum down, something might trigger that and it might do it. No big deal. Just come over, turn your gas off. Fire up your propane again. Or if your furnace is red and your crucible's red, a lot of times you can just turn the gas, it will reignite. I wouldn't recommend that. I would just start over. So I'm going to turn the gas on and I'm going to give it a little more to start with. There. And you can adjust that down. So let's say you're casting, you're ramming up your molds, you've got a hot pot of metal and you just don't want to waste the fuel. Just back that down. Just turn your temp way down and it'll stay toasty warm in there, and then you can crank it up. I'm going to be doing a lot of this stuff. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I've just finally made a decision to try to make a video every day for a while until I get tired of it. But I'm not tired yet. I hope that some of what I've been trying to show you will benefit you in building that budget foundry and the projects that I'm going to be doing. I busted out the belly tank mold that's all beat to death, and I'm going to be playing around with that. And I've actually gone as far to carve my own belly tank. And here's the body, and I've got all the molds here. This is a really old project. The wheels and the axles, I'll be kicking that off too. So if you like what you see, man, just stick around and follow along with me. Thanks, everybody.